Hey y'all, everybody's favorite bumpkin here. Forewarning, okay? This is probably going to be one of the most scattered, random, off-the-wall, and multifaceted videos that you will probably ever see from me, okay? And I'm sorry for that. I promise you two things here. One, it's going to be funny. Two, no, I did not skip my meds this morning, okay? Diving into our little journey that rivals that of a coke-fueled trash panda on a 3-day bender, some things happened. I'm not really proud of it, and I'm not really happy about it. But there's no good way to say this. Cletus died on me yesterday. Like, bad died. Dead. I know that there's a lot of people out there that say, oh, Kawasaki's are junk. They have such a small development department and everything. They just throw shit together and put it out there, and they let people, blow them up right and left. Well, that's not the case here, folks. I don't know what people are doing in other parts of the world, but, around here, these motors are tanks. The old upright Kawasaki inline fours. Let's think back on the history and the timeline on these motors here, folks. I mean, it started out with the Z1, Big Z. Yeah, that's right. Back in the 70s, okay? KZ900. That's where it all started, and it slowly developed and evolved from there. Now, how many of you guys have seen a old Concourse 1000 or a Voyager 12, which was admittedly a pretty straight one-to-one ripoff of the GL 1200, at least from a body styling standpoint? How many of these things have you guys seen with X amount of hundreds of thousands of miles on them? I know I've seen more than a few, okay? So what I'm getting down to is here, there's some people that just don't like the brand. And I don't know why. Everybody builds a turd. I mean, that's the plain and simple truth of it. But there's some people that will die on that hill that say that there's nothing good to come of them and they'll always die and they're a hazard and they shouldn't be on the road. I got one thing to say about that whenever it comes to people that are deadlocked into that mindset. Show me on the doll where the bad Kawasaki hurt you. So anyway, like I said, we got a lot of nonsensical and totally gibberish stuff that we're going to talk about today, and there's a whole bunch of it. So let's get to it, all right? Okay, now if you guys have been watching my videos for a while, even back whenever me and Shade Tree Surgeon were still putting stuff out on his channel, probably going to recognize what this is right here. That's right. Good old-fashioned Harbor Freight tire balancer. And this thing has spun a lot of rubber and it has slung a lot of lead. Well, it's made to a price point, and that price point, honestly, as my opinions and my experiences have evolved, that price point's a piece of crap. And here, let me show you why. I know, not my best look, but bear with me, y'all. Let me explain to you why this thing's a piece of crap. Full disclosure here, I have used this thing for years, and it's always had a bunch of little, piddly-dink, aggravating things about it that, yeah, this could be better. No, I wish they'd have done that, blah, blah, blah. Basically, I've nitpicked it to death in my head over the years, and I finally got enough lead in my ass to decide to do something about it. So let me tick off all the boxes here of why I say that this is a piece of crap. Now, this is not to say that this will not get you done and get everything handled on a hobbyist standpoint or a DIY doing it at the house kind of thing, because there's a lot of us guys out there. I mean, hell, that's where I started out at. We didn't have money to pay some big fancy shop to work on our junk, so we had to figure it out on our own, and it's kind of grown from there. And that's what we're doing here at JTMJ, is trying to help you guys learn and also learn the difference between a good product and a bad product. Not necessarily looking at the price tag, okay? But you can take an adequate product, which this is, and later down the road, as your needs or your personal OCD level warrants it, you can upgrade it into being an outstanding product. Let me explain why. Okay, talking hands time. Here's the big thing. These are real simple. Slide the axle here into your wheel, slide these in, and these tapers center up on the wheel bearings, and that lets you put this here to where it will spin independently, and then gravity does the rest, right? Not entirely. The problems this machine has got is numerous, and it's not any one big thing, but it all adds up. Let me show you why. Starting off is this axle that they give you. Now, whenever I bought this thing way back when, I had to take this and put this in the press and flex on it a little bit because it was slightly out of round, and I got it less out of round. I never did get it perfect, but I got it good enough to get the job done for me. But take a look at this. Not even putting an indicator on there, if you watch right in this area here, as I roll that, you can see that it's very slightly hopping up and down. It may be a little hard for the camera to pick up, but if you look for it, you'll spot it. Now that out of roundness, that is going to telegraph into the tire that you're trying to balance. Now think about it. What you're balancing, it's round. It's a circle. It has to spin evenly around a center point, which in this case would be your wheel bearings, because that's where the axle goes through. That's its point of reference to the motorcycle. Now, if this is out of round and you take these tapers and you put it on this axle that centers up on the wheel bearings in your wheel, that's going to telegraph this movement here into the entire wheel assembly that's here on the balancer that you're trying to balance. What that's going to do is any imbalance that you have in the wheel is going to magnify because this is not turning on a true round center. Moving on from that, these cones they give you that center up in the wheel, they slide on there nice and easy. Well, it's too easy because if you look, see that little bit of rock there? That's from lousy tolerance from the bore of this adapter to the diameter of this axle. Here, let me see if I can get you a better view of it. Oh yeah, that looks like a hot dog down a hallway when you look at it from that aspect. These anchor with a set screw that goes down and makes contact with this axle. What's going to happen on this axle when you tighten up your set screw? With it having this much play, it's going to make it go that way because it pushes the centering cone away from the axle. And that results in even more out of roundness. Not to mention the fact that these set screws digging in time after time after time, and however many times you balance the tire, eventually that creates damage on the shaft here, and that damage is going to lead to a high spot. And if you land on that high spot later on down the road, guess what? It just induced more out of roundness to our problem. Hang on, kids, we're going mobile here. Whee! And then, for the final thumb in the eye, these wheels that axle rides on, listen to this. You hear that? Those bearings are awful crunchy, but notice something here. That kind of rolls. That really rolls. These bearings that they put in these are just a cheap shielded bearing, and like anything, it's going to get dust, funk, junk in there. Every single time that I use this thing, I always put a little spritz of WD-40 in there and work it back and forth just to kind of slick it up. But also, if you look here at this rolling edge that the axle rides on, look close as I spin this thing. Yeah, it's not even round. It's off center. So what that does is that leads to that axle hopping up and down just a little bit here when it's laying in between these two roller wheels. Not real good for concentricity whenever you're trying to balance a wheel. So basically what I've just told y'all is the Harbor Freight tire balancer is absolute crap, right? No, not entirely. Now, y'all know me. I'm kind of a tinkerer and occasional mad scientist, if you will. That may explain why I do some of the things I do. But we can do this better, and I've already started the process. Let me show you what I've done up to this point. Okay, so we got our problem child axle and centering cones here. They're loose, they're floppy, the tolerances are all over the page. Here's how we get around that. There, that's how we get around that. I know, it may not look all that spectacular, but here's the big differences in this. This is 12 millimeter hardened drill rod, And this stuff is centerless ground, to where not only does it maintain an exact diameter all through its length, which I've gone through and I've checked with a micrometer every 2 inches along the length of this just to keep it honest, but it's dead. It's inert. It has no run out to it whatsoever because of it being centerless ground. It is, for all practical purposes, perfectly straight. And since it's 304 stainless, it's going to stay that way because it's some tough shit. Trust me, I've had to machine this stuff, and I've got the little spot burns and slivers to prove it. Just for the sake of simplicity, more or less stayed along the lines of the original design, because we're still using 2 cones with set screws in there to where it slides on this axle. But what we did, we tightened up the tolerance on this quite a bit. Now, that's a nice sliding fit, but if you look, there ain't no rock there. The reason there isn't any rock there is because I've got roughly 1.5 thousandths of an inch of clearance between the inside of this cone and the outside of that shaft. The tighter you can make this dimension here, and the more exact you can make this tolerance, the more concentric this cone is going to be with your axle here. That's going to directly relate to a more precise balance on the tire. Now, full disclosure, whenever I was starting to make all this stuff, I kind of screwed up. I had this guy. And originally what I was wanting to do is I was wanting to make this to where I could have my taper and have my dimension where I needed it. And then out here on the flat part, you can see I put a nifty little knurl there to where I could grab a hold of it and whatnot. But I kind of screwed it up. This slipped in the chuck on the lathe when I wasn't expecting it, and it threw my dimension totally out of whack on the back side here. Now, I tried cutting it back to where I could get into some decent material to be able to salvage it, but unfortunately, that was not to be. So basically, that part was scrapped, right? Wrong. This is where we had a Bob Ross moment. It's one of those happy little accidents that he likes to have a lot. Yeah, it's going to be damn hard for you guys to see here on the camera, but these tapers are actually slightly different, and there's a good reason for that. My machine moved on me whenever it actually shifted the angle of the compound on my lathe while I was cutting on this whenever it locked up. I wasn't aware of this and I didn't catch it. But basically, this part is not like this one. They have 2 different taper angles. Where that's going to come in handy for me moving forward, this section here, that's going to get taken off of there, and we're going to make a shallower taper on this, because you guys that ride old junk, kind of like I do, most of you guys have a speedometer that drives off the front wheel with a cable, and most of you guys know that there's that little drive collar that goes into the hub of the wheel, and that engages with your speedometer drive that's mounted down on the front axle. Most of them are about that big around, if not a little bit smaller. So I'm going to take our happy little accident here, and I'm going to recut him and repurpose him with a shallower angle and a little smaller diameter on the backside here. That way, if I ever do have one of these instances to where the taper can't reach the wheel bearing for that drive collar, I don't have to worry about trying to fish that out of the wheel. If I have a smaller diameter and a shallower taper here, that will slip inside there, and then I can take his buddy, which is, call it taper prime, if you will, and I can butt him up on the backside here and still get it clamped in and get it locked in the pocket, so to speak. Now, some of you guys may be wondering, well, hey, you're still using set screws to, anchor the cones on the axle. How are you going to keep from tearing the axle up? And especially since you got such a tight fit on there, what are you going to do whenever you get a little nick in the axle and you can't get the cone to slide up all the way? Well, here's how we're getting around that. Now, this is a work in progress, so bear with me, but the little bitty piece of brass. I'm going to cut this down to 3mm because I've got my holes threaded for 6mm, and we're going to drill a little bitty pocket in the end of our set screw, and then we're going to take this 3mm diameter piece of brass, and we're going to cut off a little piece that's probably, 3-4 millimeters long, something like that, and then we're going to make them meet in the middle, so to speak. We're going to press it in there with a little drop of Loctite 680 just to sweeten the deal and make sure that they don't ever come apart. They're going to say their vows, basically. It's one of those till death do us part things. Since the brass is softer than the stainless steel, the brass is a sacrificial element, if you will. But the brass will keep it from digging gouges and craters into our axle. That way we don't have a fitment problem. Speaking of bearing surfaces and things like that, the way this axle indexes on the top of the frame on that balancer, it's just got two little tabs that poke up and, it catches the end and keeps it from going this way or that. Cool. It works. Simple, stupid, but it works. Thing is, it creates a lot of drag. And if you're not aware of it, if it's dragging, you may have a tire that's slightly out of balance a little bit and not realize it because this is butted up on that tab, and it drags and it keeps the heavy spot of the tire from finding true bottom dead center when you're trying to balance it. We pocket drill the end of the shaft here, not very deep, say quarter inch or so, something like that. And then we take a single ball bearing and we press in the end of this to where it's a round surface instead of this flat surface. That way you've got the absolute minimum of contact area that's contacting that little flag on the side of the balancer frame and thus reducing friction. And this leads me up to our last part here. These roller wheels. Yeah, the holes in them are off center. Yeah, they turn out around. But also, look here. See the profile of those things? They're kind of big and chunky. They make a lot of contact with that axle. And also, if you spin them, again, you can see they're out around, and you can hear that bearing howling in there. Yeah, not good. So we're going to make a new set of roller wheels for this, but instead of having that big, broad, round edge to it, like you see right here in the cross-section shot, these are going to have a very thin, almost a knife edge to it, to where we can keep our rolling resistance to an absolute minimum. That, in turn, is going to offer more accuracy in the balancer and how it registers the heavy spot of a tire. That way we can get it dialed in. Also, while we're at it, we're probably going to stay with these same size bearings because these 608 bearings, they're stupid common. You can find them everywhere. They're skateboard wheel bearings. There's nothing special about them. You can get these that are a shielded bearing like these are, or you can get them that are a rubber sealed bearing. I am not going to use rubber sealed bearings on this because the seal from that rubber seal will actually create drag on this, and that will influence our tire. So we're going back with the shielded bearings like this, but we're stepping up to a higher grade of shielded bearing. And who knows, maybe if I decide to really push this thing over the top, we may have some of the high-speed, high-zoot ceramic bearings laying around here that we can pop in there just for the extra cool factor. Who knows, maybe we can put a Ducati sticker on it and everybody will think, oh, that's the bestest thing ever. Now, admittedly, this is just a because I can project, and it's one of those things where I'm chipping away at it here and there as I go. So, yeah, it's going to take me a little while before I get it totally done and finished. But the thing is, I'm in no rush on it because I can still use that balancer the way it is. I just want to improve on it. I want to make it better. I want to share with you guys how you can improve on a bargain basement tool and make it into a precision tool without spending a whole hell of a lot of money on it. Like I said, it may be kind of stupid and over the top, but it's my stupid and over the top. So, yeah, I'm gonna have fun with it. By the way, y'all, please excuse that high-pitched and incessant whining in the background that you may or may not hear in this video. That's due to my 3D printer that is silently slaving away in the background, and it may or may not be creating parts that will eventually one day evolve into the sentient robot overlords of Skynet and those that wish to enslave humanity. We are the last line of defense, y'all. We are the resistance. Now, at this point, I know there's a lot of you out there that are watching this video going, hey, Squirrel Girl, where in the hell, what the hell's going on with Cletus? What happened? Well, I'll tell you what happened. The beloved wife unit unexpectedly had to work yesterday, which is normally her day off, because we try to take our day offs together. That way we can actually have time as a family instead of two ships that pass in the wind, so to speak. The reality of it is that happens far too often and far more times than we'd care for. So it's a bummer whenever you got to work on your day off, and yeah, we're going to bitch and moan about it. So beloved wife unit is at work. Me and Petty Officer Squid Boy, we decide, you know what? Let's go grab Mom. Mom, if you're watching this right now, I enjoyed lunch. It got me fat and happy. Thank you. Anyway, so we grab Mom. We go eat lunch. We do our thing. Stop by the store, run around, pick up a couple things. Since Petty Officer Squid Boy's truck is a standard cab, That means 2 people can ride in it. Well, there are 3 of us. No big deal. I grab whatever motorcycle is convenient, which at that point just happened to be Cletus. We go eat lunch, we go to the store, run around, pick up some knickknacks, do our thing. We go back to Mom's place, and I hadn't noticed it until I stopped. But Cletus evacuated a lot of fluids in rapid fashion. No, he didn't blow up, okay? No, I didn't beat the shit out of it and knock out number 3 rod bearing like some other people out there in the world swear to God that it is inevitable and it was eventually going to happen to all Kawasaki's everywhere. Sorry, my bad. I need a juice box. Hang on. I'm sorry, I owe y'all an apology. I shouldn't have gone off on a rant like that. You know, I'm a little hangry, fat kid cranky moment. I should have handled that in a much more dignified and adult manner. Ooh, apple. Anyway, like I was saying, there's some people that are convinced that Kawasaki's are designed to do nothing but explode on the highway and put people in peril. That's not the case. They're a bomb-proof damn motorcycle for the most part. Do other manufacturers do things better than Cowie does? In certain aspects and areas, yeah, sure they do. But here's the thing. At the end of the day, y'all, remember, everybody builds a turd, all right? Every brand's got their quirks, and every brand's got that one model that they wish they could just erase from their history because it was so bad. So what happened with Cletus? We go to lunch. We're heading back to Mom's place to drop her off, and, you know, she'd done some shopping, get all her stuff taken into the house. And so I park in front of her house. I just happen to look down, and there's this rapidly spreading pool of coolant, like big. Basically, I was standing in a lake of antifreeze. Oddly enough, you could follow the blood trail from this, and literally 50 or so yards before I got to the driveway at Mom's house, I had a radiator hose blow. Nothing rubbed up against it or anything like that. This is just old bike shit, folks. I mean, 35-year-old hose decided, you know what? I've done enough. It is my time. I am going to ascend to the next plane, and I am going to cross that rainbow bridge. But I'm going out in a blaze of glory, y'all. So since this radiator hose split about yay far away from where the clamp is, I couldn't just cut off the bad spot and stretch it and shove it down there. It was a small enough leak that I decided, you know what? It's my ass in the seat. I'm going to take the gamble. I don't feel like going over to Ybor City, grabbing a trailer, coming back, loading the bike up, dragging it back to the house 12 miles away. So I did what any sensible person would do. I let the thing cool down. I filled it up full of water. And as soon as we took off for the house, I hauled ass back here. That's what I did. Now, there is a serious note here. And this is something that you guys might want to pay attention to here. If you have a water-cooled motorcycle and you discover you have a leak, step 1, stop. Stop. Wherever you are, stop, okay? Assess how bad that leak is. And then, if it's a small leak or not so small, kind of like what I experienced with Cletus, because he was rapidly hemorrhaging all of his lifeblood out onto the pavement, assess how bad that leak is. In my defense, I've done this more than a few times because this is what I do. But be realistic with yourself. If you're out in the middle of the boonies somewhere and you're 30 miles away from the next gas station or civilization as you know it, don't try it. You're going to tear some shit up, all right? You're better off just to go ahead, bite the bullet, admit defeat, phone a friend, make that phone call, have somebody come pick you up. However, if you're in a situation to where you do have to limp a liquid-cooled bike along whenever it's got a water leak, the main thing is you can substitute straight tap water. Hell, if you're desperate enough, you can siphon it out of a ditch somewhere, within reason, okay? Don't worry about putting coolant in there because it's just going to make a quick exit. Get some water in the thing, get it cooled down, make sure you're full. Here is your survival strategy, if you will, for riding. Small throttle openings, keep your RPM low, get in top gear as soon as feasible based on your traffic or, you know, the environment that you're in, because you want that motor doing the least amount of work and turning the least amount of RPM possible. The goal here is to keep the heat generated to a minimum. Like in my case, I was in the middle of town. I got a shit ton of stoplights whichever direction I go to head back to the temple here. whenever I was in traffic, what I would do, if I saw a stoplight coming up in front of me where I knew that I was going to get caught by the light, while I was still rolling, I'd pull the clutch in, hit the kill switch, and I would let the bike coast. That does two things. Number one, you're stopping the combustion process to where you're not adding any additional heat into what coolant you may have remaining. And number two, while you're coasting, that allows airflow to flow naturally through the radiator to take heat out of what coolant is in the system currently and help keep that heating to a minimum. All right. Basically, the clock is ticking here. So you've got to stretch that out as much as you can. This is the main thing, and this is what gets a lot of people in trouble. You've got to watch the temperature gauge like a hawk. If you don't have a gauge, if you've just got an idiot light, I really don't recommend doing this, period, because the odds of you damaging something from collateral damage from overheating the bike significantly, they're just too damn high, okay? Go ahead, make that call, phone a friend, have them bail your ass out of a jam because you've done it for them plenty enough times. I know you have. If you've got a temperature gauge on the bike, watch that temperature gauge like a hawk. You know where your temperature normally runs when everything is 5x5 in situation normal. That's your benchmark to go by. If you're going along and you see your temperature drop down, that means you need to stop. It sounds counterintuitive, I know, but let me explain. The temperature sensor for the gauge unit screws into a water jacket in the motor somewhere. The thing is, that temp sending unit has to be in direct contact with water for it to read correctly. If you're low enough to where you're not making direct contact with water, that sending unit is going to show a lower reading. When you see the temp gauge drop, that's your first warning sign. You need to stop and put some water in this thing. The next step from that, if you see the temperature gauge drop down and then start coming back up, that's a bigger red flag. You've lost enough coolant to where the motor's trying to overheat because it doesn't have a continuous flow of coolant through it. And number two, you've lost enough coolant, and what coolant is remaining is overheating and potentially on the verge of boiling enough to where it's starting to put heat back into that temperature sending unit. And that's what's making your temp gauge climb back up. Or worse, the metal of the motor, wherever that temp sender may be screwed into the motor at, has absorbed enough thermal energy from this motor running hot that it is starting to leach into that sending unit and cause the sending unit to read higher. That's a big red flag. That's when head gaskets start taking a lot of punishment and things start happening bad real damn fast. Watch your temp gauge like a hawk. Sorry, obligatory pause for a refreshing juice box moment. Like I said, you're in a race against time at this point. Fill it up, keep your RPMs to a minimum, coast whenever you can. If you got a downhill, clutch it and kill the motor. That'll be your friend, okay? Because you're forcing air through the radiator and you're taking that thermal energy out of the coolant that's in the motor, and you're not spending any energy trying to force it through the system by the motor running. Just that airflow across the motor and across the radiator, that's going to help pull heat out of that. Use that, okay? Stretch it out as much as you can. If you're caught in traffic, same scenario applies. If you see a light coming up, clutch it, kill it, let it coast down. Don't run the motor any more than you absolutely have to. The goal is to put the least amount of heat into the motor. Use that information at your own discretion. Honestly, I can't assume any kind of liability for that because at the end of the day, hey, boo, you do you, all right? This is just some strategy thoughts here from a very scattered and random brain that I happen to have today. Okay, so at the end of the day, Cletus had a hiccup. This isn't anything terminal. This isn't anything that's a death knell or anything like that. This is old bike shit, y'all. That's a 35-year-old radiator hose that decided, you know what? I've done my time here. If you look deep enough in your owner's manual for virtually any motorcycle out there, especially a liquid-cooled bike, they have a replacement window that the manufacturer recommends. I'm going off of memory here, but if memory serves me correctly, Kawasaki recommends that you replace all of your coolant hoses every 4 years on most of their models. That's a bit excessive in my book. Now, 35 years? Yeah. Honestly, this failure was on me. Now, I looked over the radiator hoses when we first got Cletus up and running. None of them felt crunchy or crackly. You know, whenever you squeeze them, you can feel that snap, crackle, pop, Rice Krispie feel from them. I'm 1,000 miles into Cletus ever since we got the thing up and running. We put him back on the road, and Well, in Cletus's defense, those have not been an easy 1,000 miles. I've been having a hell of a lot of fun with that bike, and I'm going to have a hell of a lot more fun with it here in the months and the years to come. Right now, I'm waiting on a new set of radiator hoses to come in for Cletus because I've got a couple of hoses that are molded at a specific angle in this thing, and I can't just replace them with off-the-shelf radiator hose like you would buy at the parts store. And also, I figure if I've got one hose that fails, I'm going to replace all of them because they're all the same age. Nobody's touched these things. Cletus is resting for the time being, but he's going to come back bigger, badder, and more rip snorty, oh my God, holy shit, that's fast, than he ever has before. Because while I'm doing the radiator hoses on Cletus, since I got to have the tank and the fairings off of it anyway, this motor allegedly had the valves ground whenever they fixed the alleged head gasket failure that was causing it to leak oil. Now, I do have a bit of an oil leak on this, and that's something that I'm going to remedy because my plan all along with Cletus from day one, after we got it up and running, since the valves have been recently ground in the head, I was going to put, roughly 1,000 miles or so on it, and then go back in there and recheck the valve clearances in there because whenever you remachine valves and valve seats like that, they're always going to move just a tiny, tiny bit. My brain, I would rather check it and be safe than sorry, and rather than just take it on blind faith and then potentially have a problem later on down the road. So I was planning on getting back in there anyway. Now this just gives me an excuse to go ahead and do it, knock it all out in one shot, and we'll get it done. Also, since I'm going to have the fairings off of it, we might as well deal with those steering stem bearings that have been clunking and banging around in there for the past couple of weeks because they're making themselves more known as the days go by. So yeah, look for that one, guys. That's going to be coming up here real soon. We're going to do a full detail strip on the neck bearings, and I'm going to show you guys how to replace your steering stem bearings at home. And also, in this instance, that bike originally had angular contact bearings or the individual ball style bearings on the steering stem from the factory. The bearing kit that I'm putting back in there are a conventional tapered roller bearing. Now, there's going to be some differences as far as how that assembles and how that sets up. I will make sure that I point that out in the video when we dive into this. Because I've got some rattles and bangs going on in the front of Cletus, you guys may have heard me refer to it as two skeletons fornicating in a empty steel trash receptacle or something along those lines. Sorry, Mom. I'm going to have the front end peeled off of this thing because I'm killing off those damn rattles while we're doing it, but also that way I can bring you guys in close and you guys can get a better look at what we're doing because Cletus has got a whole lot of Tupperware on there that kind of obstruct the view whenever you're trying to look at steering stem bearings and the ins and outs of having to replace them. So we're going to get all that out of the way. That way y'all can see what's up. So continuing on our sojourn of randomness here, let's talk some shop shit for a change, all right? Haven't done that in a while. Now, in the bike world, especially you Harley guys or guys that have known shakers, say like the Ducati crowd, anybody that rides an XS 650, basically all the bikes that give you the good vibes. You know that Loctite's your friend, right? And if you guys have gone and bought Loctite here recently, you know the prices of that shit's getting out of control. Loctite is a general trade term, if you will. The technical term is Threadlocker. Just because it's a Threadlocker, that doesn't mean it has to say Loctite on the bottle. And let me give you a good example. I needed some for here at the temple because I was out, and I started looking around on Amazon. Bottle red Loctite, bottle blue Loctite. Typically on these size bottles, if you look them up, they usually sell for, $16 to $18 a piece, depending on where you buy them. If you're at the mercy of your local auto parts store, you're going to pay even more than that. Now, these are a 50 milliliter bottle, which roughly translates into not quite 2 ounces. My bumpkin math is a little fuzzy right now because we're kind of all over the page today. Let me show you something here. This bottle of red and blue Loctite, it's not Loctite. This is from Amazon, and, well, shit, there's glare. Anyway, you can't read the labels. I'll put you a link down in the description on this video, but it's from a company called Vericlue. They are a direct replacement for your typical 242 formula and 271 formula Loctite Threadlocker, hence the blue and the red, okay? Now, this is where things get interesting. If you bought these 2 bottles here, then they were labeled Loctite from this company that may or may not sound a lot like Permatexian. You know what I mean. If you bought these, you'd probably spend north of, well, knocking on the door of $40. These come in a combo pack that you can buy off Amazon all day long for $10 for the both of them. Yeah, I didn't stutter. $10. Save your money, folks. It's kind of like the whole mac and cheese argument, okay? Just because it's in a fancy box that costs $3 doesn't mean it's any better than the box sitting right next to it that looks kind of plain and says great value and it's got mac and cheese inside of it. At the end of the day, it's mac and cheese, folks. And then for the ultimate, I hate my life and I want to punish everyone around me, the green stuff. Loctite 680. Now, again, this is knockoff. This is not the legitimate Loctite brand, but it works just as good, and the price point is very similar. This, since it's kind of an odd duck and it's not as nearly of a high demand product as the red and the blue is, it's a little more expensive, but still, if memory serves right, I think I paid $8 for this bottle. But this one bottle here, for what I use it for and how I use it, will probably last me until I'm changing out the third set of tennis balls on my walker. Another thing I'd like to point out to you, brake fluid, .4. In this case, yep, Walmart, SuperTech, same blue bottle. The thing is, there's a lot of marketing at play whenever it comes to chemicals like this, and there's a lot of companies out there that say, oh, synthetic brake fluid, it's better for you. That's why it's more expensive. Here's a heads up, y'all. .3 and .4 brake fluids, they are all a synthetic because they are not distilled from petroleum. They don't have petroleum distillates in them. They are a synthesized product. So I don't care what flavor of brake fluid it is, it's a synthetic brake fluid. Don't get fooled by the marketing bullshit, guys. Save your money. That's what I use all the time here at the house. That's all I've used for years. And the thing is, it does the job perfectly well. If you maintain your stuff like you should be doing, change that stuff out, flush it every couple, 3 years, something like that, you're never going to have a problem with it, okay? As close as we are to the water here in Florida, and as humid as it is, any .3 or .4 brake fluid, it's going to suck water out of the atmosphere, okay? It's like a water sponge. That's why, me personally, I flush and change all of my brake fluids yearly. I do that to eliminate problems, and also I do that to keep from having problems later down the road from water-saturated brake fluid. Corrosion, brake boil over, brake dragging, things like that. You guys with the newer Harleys, especially the touring models that have the juice clutch that everybody loves to hate, I don't know why Harley dropped the ball on that so damn bad, but those things never feel right to me. And it's because of the way the system's designed. Harley really kind of screwed the pooch on that. That's why they went back to cable clutches whenever they started building the Honda Davidson, or the M8 as most of you guys know it as. You know, I've got my version. The rest of the world has theirs. There, I said what I said. So if you keep that stuff flushed out and keep it clear and keep the water saturation down to a minimum, your clutch is going to feel a hell of a lot better at the end of the day too. Take the time, spend a little bit of money, skip that number 4 with a large fry and Coke at McDonald's, go in the kitchen, make you a sandwich, take care of your scoot. You take care of your scoot will take care of you. Now, further moving on into this long drawn out and contrived episode of randomness, because I'm brain vomiting as I go here, and while my non-sentient robot overlord here slowly slaves away at making parts that may or may not be used in the fall of humanity sometime in the indeterminate future. A lot of you guys out there, you may have a 3D printer at the house, or you may know somebody that's got one. If you don't have one and you don't want to invest in one, make friends with somebody that's got one, okay? I can't tell you how many handy little doodads and gizmos that I've cranked out on that one and my other printer that I'm slowly bringing back from the dead that make quality of life here in the shop easier, okay? Let me give you a little example. This guy. I got these things everywhere at the shop at the Ride Factory. I'm making a bunch of them from right here in the garage. What the hell is it? Well, I'll show you. You screw this to wherever you want to screw it to. There. It keeps the clutter on your workbench to a minimum, especially if you're space limited like I am here, because let's be real, I got about 17 pounds of crap stuffed in a 5-pound bag here in the temple, okay? I mean, I've got stuff hanging up in the rafters. Y'all know this. Space is a premium. Make the most of it. The thing is, These files are out there. They're on the internet. They're free to download. It's a quality of life thing, guys. The juice box is slowly working into my bloodstream here, and my blood sugar level is starting to level out somewhat, so things are clearer now. I know this has been a very random video, and for that, sorry, not sorry. This is one of those things where I was just like, blah, brain vomit. So let's touch on a couple things that we haven't talked about, or some stuff that some of our new viewers out there may have never heard us talk about before. Speaking of new viewers, I'd like to take a minute to celebrate a milestone that we've reached here at JTMJ. The other day, we hit 5,000 subscribers on the channel. Cool. That is all because of you guys and y'all's faith in us and what we do here on the channel here in the temple, all right? I don't take that lightly. Now, the thing is, it's pretty overwhelming for some dumb hick like myself and everything to have that many people that want to actually see what I'm doing and see what I'm doing in the future enough to click that little button right there that says like, and then click the one right next to it that says subscribe. That way they can get notifications about whenever we put new videos out. Now, the funny part is, looking at the data on YouTube, the biggest majority of our viewers, they're not subscribed to the channel. Why? I mean, I'm not one of these people, I'm sitting here, I'm going to whore myself out for clicks and likes and all that stuff, but it's a weird question because if I got a lot of people looking at me, how come they haven't subscribed? Maybe you should. Think about it. We appreciate the hell out of it for those that do, and if you do in the future, hey, thank you. That means a lot to us here. I'll be honest with y'all. When I started this channel back in August, I had no idea it was going to blow up to the extent that it has for me. And even with all of my teething problems and all of my faux pas and all of the times where YouTube and the powers that be have conspired against me. But I want to say a big heartfelt thank you, bigly thank you to everybody that's subscribed here to the channel, all of our members over on Patreon, all of our members over in Discord that have come on board to help us grow our knowledge library over at the JTMJ Discord channel. We're adding people to that thing on the daily. We're adding knowledge there. We're adding ability. We're adding resource. That is where we're getting all the brainy, nerdy, knowledgeable types together in one location to where we can freely discuss things about motorcycles, shop stuff, and plus life in general and all the silliness and funny ha-ha and oh my god, I can't believe he said that, kind of stuff in one spot. All right, that's where we kick back and have fun with it, but that's where ideas happen. That's where conversation develops. That's where ideas flow. That's where inspiration starts at. And the thing is, I would love for you guys to come on board and be a part of that with us. Okay, how you get there? Go down here in the description of this video, and there's a link to the JTMJ Patreon, okay? Now, I want you guys to know, I've said this before, and I'll say this until my dying breath. This is not trying to sell you something, okay? We have free membership options. We've always had free membership options. We will continue to have free membership options until the day that the internet crumbles into dust and we all revert back to banging rocks with sticks and trying to figure out how we're going to get a coconut out of a tree for dinner. That is how you gain access to the JTMJ Discord. The reason we do that is so we can control the quality of members over in our Discord channel and the quality of information that we're putting into our library. Now, don't think that we're being all snobbish about this, because we're not. We take writers from any and all walks of life. We discriminate against no one, and we will never, ever, 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 ever trash talk somebody for lack of experience on their part. That's why we're all here. We're here to learn. We're here to grow. We're here to enrich one another. For those of y'all that have jumped on board with us, my heartfelt thanks. For those of y'all that are on the bubble thinking about it, ain't that bad of a place to be. We have a hell of a lot of fun. We share a lot of stuff that's totally not bike related. We all have a good laugh out of it. But the main thing is we all help one another. That's what we're there for. We're there to enrich one another. We're there to help everybody out. Come join us. So in closing here, I would like to apologize to my beloved wife unit because, in her defense, I was left unsupervised during the production of this video, and I did not have that divine voice of reason standing around in the background telling me, no, you can't do that. No, you can't say that. Hey. It's like the wife unit always told my mama. She never married me for my charm, y'all. Anyway, till next time, just remember, I love you. I'm grateful for you. 5,000 is not a small number to me by any damn stretch of the imagination. Let's see if we can add to that. Let's see if we can add to the Discord. Come join us. Come learn with us. Be one with us. Okay, well, that does sound a little corny. Come on, hang out. Let's have a good time. Let's learn something. Till I see you next trip, remember, I love you, and I'll catch you on the flip side.
Force will be with you, always.